Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? All excited about this? Good. So, in 2017, ACI Board, Developing Strategic Plan, recognized that there was something missing from our mission. We have all these technical committees writing great documents. And we would write those documents, and for the most part, they would be available for anybody who might have the interest in going and seeking out what ACI is doing to get those things referenced in construction documents, building codes, rules and regulations. So they changed it to make sure it includes that not only do we develop and disseminate, but we advance the adoption. And this is really crucial component of what happens with ACI work. We already covered those learning objectives. Code development is different everywhere. There is no one size fits all. Many countries have a national building code. The United States does not. In the United States, this is an example of the International Building Code developed by, it's a model building code developed by the International Code Council. So the International Code Council develops this model so that every jurisdiction out there doesn't have to start from scratch. They start from that model code and then they make modifications to it. So this color key shows where the purple is a statewide mandatory code based on a model code. The red has a statewide code that is permissive. So a jurisdiction can either choose to adopt it, a jurisdiction within that state can either choose to adopt it or not. Then we have the white states, which has no code, no statewide code. And the yellow states are kind of unique. Like Alabama says, yeah, you have to follow the building code, but only for theaters and places of assembly and motels, places where there's transient occupancy. So every state is different. Then the code, the general building code, when I'm talking about code, I'm not talking about one of the ACI codes, I'm talking about the general building code. The general building code is part of the entire municipal, state, whatever jurisdictional level you're at, code. So it's right there with parking tickets to garbage collection. It's all part of the code of the jurisdiction. So it's one little part. And it's a quasi-technical, quasi-political development process. It's not developed the way we developed ACI Standards, which is a rigorous ANSI accredited process where everything has to be fully vetted and considered. So when we look at just the code part, now picture yourself as a code official in a jurisdiction. This is the stuff that they have to cover. From zoning to plumbing to mechanical, the electrical, not just the building part. So they have to be aware of all of this stuff. Right now for ACI, what we really focus on is the general building code, the existing building code, the energy conservation code, the International Green Construction Code, the International Private Sewage Disposal Code, the Residential Code, the Swimming Pool and Spa Code, Wildland Urban Interface Code. Those are the primary codes that we focus on because that's what's related to ACI committee work. So as you're developing documents within the committee and they fit this and they can help serve the public, we try to get them adopted into the building code. Right now we have ACI codes currently adopted in 5 of those. We have multiple standards referenced in the International Building Code. We have 562, the repair code referenced in the International Existing Building Code. We're trying to get things referenced into the International Energy Conservation Code from ACI Committee 122. ACI 332 is referenced in the Residential Building Code, and we have a new standard being developed on swimming pools and spas that will go into the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. So here's the process. Anybody can submit a code change to the model code. This past cycle, there were over 1,900 proposals submitted. We have 2 code advocacy engineers, Carrie and myself, who go through those. So of those 1,900, we threw a bunch out because they were mechanical or plumbing or electrical, and that really doesn't have anything to do with concrete. But the things that could potentially impact the concrete industry, there were 1,200 code change proposals that needed to be reviewed. Of those, we found that 100 were really relevant to ACI committee work. There were more that were relevant to the concrete industry, but ACI is only concerned about advancing the concrete technology as it's presented by our committees. And 10 of those were ones where we were ACI was either a co-proponent or the proponent at submitting the code change, like a code change to add 440 to which is the glass fiber reinforced polymer rebar of use in structural concrete. We put in a code change proposal to add that to the code. So our primary objective is to get ACI documents referenced without modification in the building code. We want to try to and then we have to maintain it so that other people don't try to take it back out or modify it to deviate from what the experts at ACI determined was appropriate to be in that code. So even if we get it into the code, there could be people showing up at the code hearings to say, you guys didn't get it right, we need to fix it, and we're going to fix it here rather than coming to ACI to fix it. So it's a challenge even to maintain it and update it, as well as just trying to introduce it the very first time. A lot of the language in the building code, there isn't an ACI standard. For ACI information to get referenced, a document to get referenced in the building code, it has to be written in standard language. It has to go through the ANSI accreditation process that ACI uses for its standards development. So there's other language related to concrete in the building code. So we try to align those provisions the best we can with ACI committee work by looking at ACI other documents, guides, and practices, just to try to make sure there's some alignment. And we can use all the help we can get with that part. But then we try to make sure that whatever is going into the code is acceptable for concrete technology. And then another component of this code development is posturing us. So there's some like horse trading that has to go on. Like FEMA might want a code change to go forward in the model building code, and they'll say, hey, can you testify and help us out on this, and then we'll help you out on your code change proposal. So there is some horse trading. Like I said, it's not the same technical vigor that we have here at ACI in our standards development. It is quasi-political. So this is what we currently have referenced in the IBC. In 2018, in the IBC, we had 216, 318, and 550 referenced. In the 21 model building code, we added 117, ITG 7 on tolerances, and then in 24, we were able to add the glass fiber reinforced polymer structural concrete design. In 2027, we may be looking at adding 2 more ACI standards, and this is to the International Building Code. For the International Existing Building Code in 2024, we'll see the ACI 562 referenced. In the IRC, we'll continue to have 318 and 332 referenced. And in the International Swimming Pool and Spa, for structural design, we have 318 for the reservoir of pools. But the ACI newly formed committee 322 said 318 doesn't go far enough because it doesn't really deal with leakage issues. So there's some durability and leakage requirements that have to be addressed. So they're trying to get something done for initially they were thinking they would get their standard done in time for the 2027, but it doesn't look that way. It'll probably be 2030 before they can get their code in. The model code is developed on a 3-year cycle. Then the local jurisdictions need to adopt the model code. They typically do that with amendments before it becomes the law. So as I mentioned earlier about every state being different, one state could be using a code that's based on the 2012 IBC, which is referencing ACI 318-08 or 09 or 11. And another state right next door could be using a 21 code referencing ACI 318-19. So every state is completely different. So everything's broken out into topics and subject matter. But there's lots of things out there where ACI currently doesn't even have a standard. So we're relying on the code process to fill in the voids. We don't have a standard. ACI doesn't have a standard on acoustical properties of concrete. So everything about acoustical properties of concrete is written into the building code. So we should be thinking, the ACI as a whole should be thinking about how to fill these voids by getting the standards developed at ACI where the technical expertise about concrete resides rather than having it developed elsewhere. And when there's a void, ASCE is now writing a standard on all foundation systems, including concrete. Are they the best place to have that written, or is the expertise better here at ACI? Well, since ACI doesn't have a standard that addresses foundations, somebody's going to step up and fill that void. So ASCE has done so in that case. You know, the same thing with 3D printed buildings. We don't have a standard yet. We have a committee. We don't have a standard yet, so UL has proposed a standard to be referenced into the building code. So again, these are just the topics and where they fall. Again, the 3D printed buildings, there was something proposed for concrete to comply with in Appendix AW of the residential building code, and we had to fight to get that out based on the recommendation from our committee. So the residential code is more prescriptive than it is a design process. It's not based on rational design. You can use rational design to do residential buildings, but the code requirements in the residential code are prescriptive, which means they need to be transcribed into the body of the residential code. So we're working very closely with Committee 332 to try to make that happen. Then there's a bunch of reference standards. It doesn't stop at just those 15 codes that I mentioned that the building code official needs to know. There's all these reference standards that go into the code. And in those reference standards, there's other places for ACI information to committee work to be reflected in these reference standards. There's a standard just on storm shelter design. You know, and we should be looking at that standard, or we try to look at that standard not just from the technical design and construction criteria, but what level of inspection should be required if it's a community shelter. So does that involve ACI certifications? Again, it's not just about developing the technical design and construction criteria. There's many other aspects that can come into play. And then there's Committee 122, as I mentioned, they have several documents they're developing that are applicable to the International Energy Conservation Code. While that's a code, it follows the ACI Standards development process in lieu of the code development process, as is true with the International Green Construction Code. It follows a standards development process and not the code process. So, all this information about code processes and stuff, there is an ACI code advocacy portal on our website. I welcome and encourage you to go and visit that to learn more about it. We have a section there just about the model building code process. It is a complex process, and again, as I mentioned a little earlier, there's also that whole thing of networking and posturing and fostering and finding support for issues. This is especially true, there's a special demand for this, having an audience with local building code officials, because those are the ones who ultimately make the decision about what goes into the model building code. So being effective, your two staff, Carrie and myself, we got the system down for the model codes. We understand it. You don't have to necessarily learn it, you just need to participate. And we're good at the general knowledge. We're not subject matter experts on everything ACI does. So we need expert testimony at the hearings, especially to respond to questions in rebuttal. Carrie and I, again, we could present the topic. We can say, this is the code change, this is the language you should use. But when somebody says, no, we don't want that in the building code because of such and such and so, somebody with the expertise needs to be able to step up at the microphone and help us out. And then there's also the education of the code officials. Again, picture this poor code official with these hundreds of reference documents in reference standards in 15 different codes that they have to have some knowledge about. So they're overwhelmed. They need ACI to be a resource to them so that they can have somebody they can contact when they have questions about concrete. So this is the schedule for the new next round of code development. It's a pretty rigorous schedule. There's going to be multiple public hearings or committee action hearings. In this upcoming cycle, there will be multiple committee action hearings. We're going to go in front of the committee twice. So the code development process is first, you testify in front of a committee, and then you testify to the general audience. The code is split up into two groups. They do one group 1 year, another group the subsequent year. Most of our stuff falls into group B, but 216 information about fire performance of concrete falls into group A. Swimming pools will fall into group A. So there are a few items that happen in group A, but most everything that ACI currently turns out is related to structural, and it falls under group B. So this is basically an overview of the timeline of when things will occur. There's a lot of time and commitment to reviewing things in between the hearings, because everybody who wants to testify at the hearings has to submit either a code change proposal initially or a public comment. And then you have to review all of those comments. So if we submit something that says we want ACI 562 referenced in the existing building code, people can submit public comments saying, no, we don't think that's a good idea. We don't like it. We think it should be just left to the design professionals, which is what happened to us in multiple cycles. So as we go through this whole new code development process, there's going to be these multiple committee action hearings occurring, and then the public comments. So the committee action hearings, you step up to a microphone and you testify to a committee, a panel of experts identified by the ICC to serve on this committee. And then they vote, they make a recommendation. It's either to approve or approve as submitted, approve as modified, or disapproval. After the committee action hearings, of which there will be 2, you come back and testify to the general audience present at the hearing, and they vote, the assembly of code officials, and there's a lot of people in the room who are just proponents of code changes, but only the code officials are permitted to vote. They get a little clicker, and they get to vote in support of your testimony, and your testimony at this hearing is either to support what the committee recommended, or to change what the committee recommended through a modification, or ask for disapproval of the committee recommendation. So those are your choices, and then you testify to the audience, they make a recommendation. That's not even the final part of the process, because there's about 200 code officials typically in the room at the hearing. So they do an online government vote at the end of the process. Once the hearings are all over, you go to online government voting, and there about almost 6,000 code officials are then voting on what will be in the next edition of the building code. We have no way of reaching those. Carrie and I can't reach 5,000 building code officials in all the jurisdictions. So again, there's a need for more action and activity, involvement with the local building code officials, because we should be talking to them at the local level and saying, you really need to support this. This is a good idea. This is going to be good for the constituents in your jurisdiction. We want to make sure the public's safe. So we need your support on this. And as I mentioned, we have this rigorous ACI process. When you go to the code hearings, you get 2 minutes to testify. And that's it. They'll cut you off. And then the opposition everybody in opposition gets 2 minutes to testify. You get 1 minute in rebuttal of support and 1 minute in rebuttal in opposition. And that's then followed by either the committee action or the assembly action. So you never know when your item's going to come up. So you have to sit in this freaking meeting room all day long, because if on one code change proposal there's 10 people as proponents who want to speak and 5 people as opponents that want to speak, that's 45 minutes for a code change. The next code change, the proponent might go up to the microphone and say, I'm withdrawing my code change, and it's over just like that. So it could take hours for a code change, or it could take seconds. So you never have a clue when your code change is really going to be heard. Then they have all these rules. Now me, I'm fairly animated. I don't want to be stuck behind that podium. I need to be out here talking to my audience, waving my hands around. No hand gestures whatsoever. You just have to stand up there behind that microphone and make your testimony. You can't imply anything big or little, or no hand gestures whatsoever. And you're just stuck behind that microphone, and it can be intimidating, especially when you're testifying to the audience and you have this whole audience out there, and you can't move around. So you're sitting there as a target. So the first few items that are heard in the hearings, I can tell you pretty much what day they're going to be heard on. Like the first 20 will probably be heard on the first day. After that, I have no idea when the items are going to be heard. And then typically it's an 8 to 7 day, but they only have the hearing, the convention center where the hearing is held, they only rented it for 9 days. So if it's taking a long time to get through the codes, it's not uncommon that we have gone until 1 o'clock in the morning and then started up again at 7 o'clock in the morning because people were spending too much time at the microphones. So again, as I said, it's either approved as submitted, approved as modified, or disapproved in the committee action hearings, and then when it goes to the public comment hearings, you can have as modified by public comment, and they'll always accept a withdrawal. So when we go through the process, we have to review the codes. We have to identify co-proponents. The more co-proponents we have signing on to a code change, the better it looks to the committee as having industry-wide support. They don't want a whole bunch of people from one industry, but like we work with, Carrie and I, we solicit support from for 562, the repair code, we got the Building Owners and Managers Association to come up to the microphone and speak in support. We got FEMA to come to the microphone and speak in support. So it's about all this networking that has to happen. So as we're having dialogues with other interested parties, we need to get them on board with it. People can serve on the committees. Got nothing else to do and you want to spend hours listening to code hearings or code proposals, you can volunteer to serve on a committee. Attend the hearings, participate by helping to prepare testimony and also providing testimony. Again, the code official knowledge part, that's what they need to know, and the hundreds of reference standards. There's over 500 standards, reference standards included in the International Building Code, of which ACI 318, the five of them are from ACI. So general advocacy, we really need to help establish ACI as a technical resource. We need to have ACI actively engaged in the code advocacy, the code development. And it can be just recommending code change language to Carrie and I to take forward. There's lots of levels of activity that can happen. And really, we are a professional society here at ACI. We develop these documents. It's not just for the sake of having the right technical information in a publication. It should be like our obligation as professionals to make sure that we're satisfying the need of the public. This is about life, safety, health, and welfare of the general public when we get to the building code. So as we're developing this important information, it's imperative that we try to get it included into the building code. So thank you.